This is what happens when you procrastinate, ladies and gentlemen. Our first speaker is Jeff Diller, who is as an undergraduate double majored in English and philosophy, is currently an MA candidate at Cal State Fullerton. He also remains connected to philosophy, so TAing for an existentialism course right now. And appropriately, he's going to talk to us on the following paper: Getting Inside the Theater of the Absurd, Philosophy as a Point of Access by Waiting for Godot.
Okay, so I did have a PowerPoint arranged, and I was going to show some pictures and talk around them, but you know, so it goes. You just have to envision what I'm talking about. Hopefully I can describe it well enough to you. So, Getting Inside the Theater of the Absurd, Philosophy as a Point of Access, is the title of the paper. So, Martin Eslin's The Theater of the Absurd is my main source that I'm arguing against. Estlin locates the absurd within a long tradition of literature and theater. This is a little bit beyond the scope of my paper. What is pertinent to my paper is his analysis of the theater of the absurd as a convention. So he locates the commonalities that he perceives among these plays. First, they don't have any story or plot to speak of. Often they are without beginning or end. Action is nonlinear, cyclical, repetitive. Secondly, characters lack stable identities. They are often distorted caricatures of humanity. They are unrecognizable because their actions lack motivation and their speech lacks coherency. And thirdly, the action or images on stage represent the inner reality of the author's poetic vision of the plight of humankind. The stage becomes a place where dreams, nightmares, fantasies, and illusions all unfold in crooked time. And Estlin says that this style of playwriting accomplishes the distancing or alienating effect that Bertolt Brecht envisioned but could not fully achieve in his own plays. Alienation is the erosion of identification between audience and actors. It is with this and more in mind, of course, that Estlin asserts that the audience of the absurd plays see the happenings on the stage entirely from the outside. And he makes this claim in his actual essay, The Theater of the Absurd. And essentially his argument is that there's no common ground between the characters and the actions of the play on the one hand, and the audience on the other hand. So this disparity makes the play incomprehensible and thus inaccessible to the audience, is what Estlin claims, essentially. And this claim is what I aim to challenge in my paper. So I continue with Estlin's analysis for a bit. He sees the absurd as anti-literary because of its roots connecting back up with vaudeville and pure theater and other things like that, which I don't discuss too much. But the anti-literary aspects of the absurd are that it's non-discursive, it's not making any arguments at all, and it devalues language as a vehicle for meaning and truth. The language of the absurd is concrete stage images. That's what Estlin argues. These images express the ineffable, the unnameable, the inexpressible, and so on. In short, they express the bare reality of human existence as it is intuitively felt by the audience. And language is, of course, subverted. The absurdists are skeptical of language, so cliches and other bits of ready-made language, such as lists of adjectives, lists of synonyms, other lists of these sorts, often find their way into the dialogue. And the absurd, Estlin argues, has renounced arguing about the absurdity of the human condition and merely presents it in terms of concrete state images. So these images may, for some span of time, defy conceptuality, but eventually, I argue, they point back to their points of origin, which is, of course, language and discourse. Language and discourse are both informing the theater of the absurd. So my argument, what is informing the poetic images of the theater of the absurd? And here in particular, Beckett's images in Waiting for Godot, is a whole history of philosophy a whole history of Western philosophy, basically, concerned with the human situation, the human condition, essentially an anthropocentric endeavor. And the images of Waiting for Godot point to philosophy, at least implicitly, if not explicitly. So here is where the images would come into play. I basically juxtapose Raphael's image of the School of Athens with Beckett's image of Vladimir deep in thought and Estragon pulling at his toes. And so I'm kind of looking at what I call the intertextuality of images, the way images speak with or point to other images. And so what you would see here is Plato pointing up to the sky and Aristotle with the flat open palm down to the ground. And so this is at the center of the School of Athens, Raphael's painting that is in the Vatican. And so at the center you have an aged Plato pointing to the sky, a gesture that basically signifies his whole philosophy, which is a rational philosophy, an abstract philosophy. Plato believes that true knowledge is knowledge of the forms, which are, of course, abstract. His philosophy is otherworldly. Truth transcends the physical and material world. Eyes turn away from the experiential world toward abstract, rational, non-empirical knowledge. His student, Aristotle, next to him with the flat palm, is an equally telling gesture. Aristotle is an empiricist and an early scientist. He recognizes that the human mind longs for answers concerning the nature of empirical or external reality. And Plato, pointing up to the heavens, obviously provides no such knowledge of the physical world. So here they are in a dialogue with one another, basically two sides of philosophy, the rational and the empirical, speaking with one another. And then I would switch to basically zoom out of that image and show all of the ancient Greek philosophers that are surrounding Plato and Aristotle there in that painting. And in that same sense, I see a history of philosophy kind of surrounding Didi and Gogo, just like that. And so the image that would come up after that would be the closest thing I could find to Vladimir deep in thought and Estragon pulling at his toes. It's Vladimir kind of just staring ahead, and then behind him, Estragon is holding his boot in his hand. So in this way, I say that Didi represents more of the rational, like Plato, and Gogo represents more of the empirical. And this will develop further as I move on. I'll go from that to Descartes to Heidegger and Sartre, and then Hegel, and kind of wrap it all together. So Estlin gives a warning. He says, he warns against approaching Beckett's plays with the intention of discovering the key to their understanding, of demonstrating in exact and definite terms what they mean. Why? Well, the world of Waiting for Godot lacks definitive meaning itself. First, Didi and Gogo cannot even agree if they are waiting for Godot in the right place. Secondly, they cannot quite agree how long they have been waiting there together. Third, they cannot make any definite identity claims, really. Are the Pazzo and Lucky of Act 1 the same Pazzo and Lucky of Act 2? This question is mentioned. Of course, it's never quite answered because answers are not what comes up in Beckett's plays. Essentially, Beckett presents us with a postmodern world, a world devoid of objective meaning and values, a world inhabited by billions of fragmented and decentered selves, a world where the self and the other are wholly interdependent upon one another.